Hi, Mrs. Wyatt. How are you today?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Pretty good. Go ahead and have a seat. Thank you. So my name is Grace Hawk, and I am the Human Resources Director here at Defense Logistics Agency, and I will be conducting your interview today.
Thank you, Ms. Hawk.
Great. So you can go ahead and take some notes. I'll be taking some notes as well, just writing down some of your answers. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've worked for Defense Finance and Accounting Service, DFAS, for 27 years. I've worked in accounts receivable. I've worked in accounts payable. I've worked in dispersing, which disperses the money from out to the contractors and vendors for the military, and we take payments in from the military, from contractors and vendors that owe us, that we do work for. I've actually currently in auditing, so I'm a liaison between the outside auditors, the private auditors, and the Defense Finance and Accounting Service.
Great. Great. So what has brought you to this point in your career today?
Well, a lot of hard work, Ms. Hawk. I have 2 degrees. I have a bachelor's in management, and I have a bachelor's in management accounting that I got from Park University. I actually have been through a lot of classes, a lot of training classes at work, and which got me to the position that I am now. I am very attentive on developing my skills.
Awesome. Great.
So.
Great. So where do you see yourself in maybe the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years, I'd like to start my master's degree, and I'd also like to be in management, which is where my heart is at work, because I am a natural born leader, and I like to lead, and I like to manage people, and I like to work with people. So
Great. Great. So what are your strengths?
my strengths are, again, leadership.
Of course.
I'm able to speak in front of a crowd. Doesn't matter how many, 500, 1,000, or 2. It doesn't matter how many. Of course, interviews make me nervous, but I'm able to teach,
Awesome.
and I have different. Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. What are your greatest strengths?
I have different skills in software that I can use, and I'm able to bring a team together through the storming, norming, and get them working on the same plane, and weed out the problems that a team has.
Great. So on the other side, what would you say your biggest weaknesses are?
My biggest weaknesses are dealing with people who just want to ride, or not exactly. They don't want to put forth their best effort.
Great answer.
And how I deal with them is I read books on how to deal with people, and eventually sometimes you have to elevate the issue to a manager. That would help. So.
Great. So why do you want to work here?
Well, I've heard a lot of good things. I heard there's a lot of good morale at Defense Logistics Agency at DLA. So I like the high morale, and it also has the government benefits. And I want to further my knowledge in the Department of Defense and working with it, because right now I just work with contractors and vendors, and the money going in and out, and I think it would be a good experience and a good stepping stone for me to go to DLA.
Great. So you've worked with prior companies that are kind of similar. So can you tell me what regulations you've used and how you've applied those to your current job?
Sure, Ms. Hawk. I have, for example, I've used Title 31 subset 3332 to establish a procedure for DFAS, Defense Finance and Accounting Service, to actually claim unclaimed funds from various states and countries. And under that subset, we had to go through the guidelines, and we have to collect, instead of letting an outside agency or an outside company, so that we don't have to pay them, collect those. And I used the Lean Six methodologies to actually set that up. And of course, I defined what was going on at the moment, and I used, that's the first methodology. The first step in Lean Six is defining, and there was nothing really going on. Occasionally they would go out and claim claims, but nothing was set up for it. And then I measured what was going on. I had to go out and pull the data, because Lean Six Sigma is a data-driven process.
Right.
So I went out and I pulled the data and found out that there was, just looking at the internet and the different sites for missing money, I found out that there was over $5 million that was sitting of the Department of Defense funds sitting in state's care. And then I went down and I analyzed it. I figured out the root cause was because the priority of collecting this was not in sight of the managers, because the receivables for these funds have already been written off. So yeah, and then I decided to improve it. I went into the improve phase of Lean Six, and I set up a database. I created a database, a tracking database, and a means to go out and tell the accounts receivables, hey, you wrote this off, but I got the money in from the state, and we pulled the money from the states. So, and then we control that. We watch the numbers, we watch the websites. So
Awesome. So, Ms. Wyatt, can you give me an example of the system softwares you've used and how you've used them?
yes, I've used Microsoft, and I've used Word, of course, for memos and such, and like memos to auditors, telling them we don't have the information, or the information you're asking for will be provided in a different manner, and provide that to them. I've used Excel spreadsheets to go down and calculate fuels that have gone between countries. It's called replacement in kind for foreign military sales. And I had to keep a spreadsheet balance on that. I've used databases. I've created spreadsheets, of course, but I've also created databases, as mentioned in the previous question, for unclaimed funds and for tracking purposes of audit requests in my current job. So those are the software systems that I've used, and Outlook, of course.
Great, awesome. So obviously with that, you've done a great deal of communication. Can you tell me what level of communication skills you've briefed?
The level of communication skills, and oh, I forgot, I use PowerPoint also. When I do a briefing, I make up a PowerPoint. I have briefed the director of DFAS on the various Lean Six Sigma projects. I've briefed her on how we're going to do Feds Feed Family.
Wow.
For the building. We collect food from the Mid-Ohio Food Bank, and I organize that. I lead that in the building. So I've had to brief her on the collections of that. And I use the PowerPoints to do that. That's the highest level I've briefed, but I also have briefed outside external customers, such as Navy bases, such as auditors, private industry auditors, and I've briefed contractors such as Honeywell on different processes, how they can electronically get funds to us instead of sending us a paper check that we'd have to deal with. I've briefed internal customers, such as, I've taught different processes through the years. I've taught new processes that come up, say on accounts receivable, how to do this. I've taught them out of desk procedures. I've written desk procedures and give them to people and walk them through the processes, so.
Great. So I know we've talked a lot about what you've done. Is there anything specific that you could point out about your current job that may have prepared you for the position that we're talking about today?
Well, of course, working on the systems. I work in the AMT system, Audit Management Tool is what it stands for, and I actually go out to the operations in the building and pull documents and work with people to get documents to put in the AMT database.
Great.
It's an Oracle database. It could be like IPAC, and intergovernmental process payment and collection. I could go out and pull documents on that to put in the database. So I work a lot in the databases, which would prepare me for the system accountant position.
Great, awesome, great answers. So let's move on to the next. Other than the accomplishments that we've talked about today, is there anything else that you're proud of or that you've accomplished?
Well, I did mention Feds Feeds Family.
Yeah.
So I've done that. I also work on the, as a SMAP facilitator, which is supervisory management assimilation process. And what that does is I go in and facilitate groups with their supervisors in order to get them to communicate better.
Awesome, that sounds great. So let's see, why did you leave your most recent position?
I left my most recent position because I actually needed something new, but I also wanted to advance my career. I wanted to learn new things and attain a additional level of knowledge that I didn't have. So.
Great. Why should we hire you?
I believe I'm the person for your job. I would be a good asset to your company with the skill level that I have as far as leading groups and researching, getting the information that is needed to actually do the system accountant's work. And I also, not only can I lead groups, I'm a good learner. So I can listen, I am teachable, so.
Great. So can you describe a difficult problem that you could not solve and how you solved the problem successfully?
Yes. I had a problem where I could not, I took you through the Lean Six methodology, so I won't do that again, but I had a problem where I needed to get out and resolve a personnel issue with someone that was on one of the teams. And I actually brought people to the meeting that was, the regular scheduled meeting, and did a team building exercise. And the team building exercise really didn't work, but it was enough to document it. So I took it to the next level and I reached to management, and I networked quietly throughout the building because I didn't want the problem to actually be worded, so I didn't use any names or anything, but I networked and found out some different tools that I could use to work with this person and get them involved in the group. And then eventually we ended up talking to the manager, and it was a success because they just didn't understand where the group was going, and the manager let them know that it's okay. So.
Great. Can you tell me how you built your career to to the level that it is today? Like what position you started with and how you've worked up to that?
I started out as a GS4 accounting technician, and that was basically an input clerk. I would get bad checks in from Defense Commissary Agencies, DECA, and I would input them into a spreadsheet, and then someone else would use them, and then eventually I got to the point where I called people to get the money all over the United States and all over in different nations that I'd have to contact to get the money. And then my next position was I was in accounts payable, so I made sure that big contractors and small vendors like would get paid. And then I was in accounts receivable for military sales, and I worked often with different countries. Diplomats from different countries would come over, or I would go travel with them to meet them, and we would do replacement in kind, exchange fuels with different countries instead of actual funds. So it was a circle, you know. Say Italy got 100 gallons off of us, and we got 200 gallons off the UK, and then France got 300 gallons off of us. We would reconcile that within ourselves. So.
Oh, great. How would you say you do with multitasking, Mrs. Wyatt?
Multitasking is a good thing. You have to use like your Outlook calendar and your task manager. I like to multitask because it gets the job done faster, and you can get more than one job done faster. So yes, I have no problems multitasking.
Great. So for the position, you'll be required to work in large groups and individually. Do you feel like that's something that you would be comfortable with?
That's fine. I am fine working independently on my own, but I'm also good working in groups, whether I lead the group or I don't lead the group. I can be a good follower also.
Great. So it looks like we went through quite a bit today, and we have a lot to review. Do you have any questions for me?
If this position, how many more people are you going to interview for this position, and if so, when will you hire?
Great. So we've had about 15 applicants, and we'll be conducting about 15 interviews. The final decision will be made by November 1st, and we'll be in contact with you about that position. So we will still keep your application in the system, so if you were to want to maybe apply for a different job in the future, we'd reach out to you about that as well.
Oh.
All right. Well, I thank you so much for your time, Mrs.
Well,
Wyatt.
thank you.
And we'll be in contact with you. All
Okay.
right. You have a good day.
You too.